Hi, my name is Marina Aguilar Martinez, and I'm going to talk about my research project named Virtual Education as a Consequence of the Pandemic Caused by COVID-19. My consultor was teacher Manuel Demetrio Aquino Bonilla. In the first part, we have the introduction. So I decided to divide, to classify into three important points. The first, to review important aspects that occurred during 2019 and 2020 caused by coronavirus. According to this, in my January in 2019, the microbiologist Joan Kao Jung diagnosed a family of 7 members with coronavirus. It was in China, so it was the first case of coronavirus, and it was where coronavirus started. In February 28, 2020, the government of our country confirmed the first person infected with COVID-19. It was a man who traveled to Italy. So the quarantine in Mexico began on March 23 in 2020, and it was created a program called Jornada Nacional de Sana Distancia, and the classes had to take a form that most of the people affected were not related to, because not all people were related to take or to give online classes. Yes, so my research project were elaborated with my students of the Escuela Secundaria Oficial número 732, David Alfaro Siqueiros. My research problem is statement. In this part, the first problem in which my project are centered are my students. We need to think also in teachers, in family parents, and in people in general. But we need to think about the context, the time, the space, the resources, and the economy that our students, teachers, and family parents have. My research questions. The first is, in what way school community had to change their lifestyle? The second, how the quarantine have affected students in an emotional way. And third, what are the principal advantages and disadvantages of the online education? As a way to ask to give an answer. Sorry, here my is hypothesis. So, if students adapt to the conditions of virtual education, then they will have a better chance of continuing with good academic progress. Through virtual education in times of pandemic, students will identify priorities in their personal academic life. Yes, because we need to think about both the personal and the academic life of our students. My objectives. I write 3 objectives. The first, to analyze the consequences that make online education difficult. Um, Here, we need to think about all the disadvantages of online education. The second is to compare the form of teaching and learning in a virtual and a face-to-face way. We need to think about both. We need to think about the teaching and the learning, about the teacher and the student. Yes, because it's a process. We need to think about the virtual and the face-to-face way to teach and to learn. And the third is to identify the advantages and disadvantages of taking classes online, because it's necessary to think about the good and the bad things that online education have. As justification, we have to know the conditions that education face at the moment. We need to think about the advantages, the disadvantages, that um, that online education has produced. And obviously, we need to think about the adaptation that the students and teachers have had to take to improve the condition of virtual education. We need to think about the state of the condition of the group with which we'll work. Yes, so we need to think that all of these condition and needs, we need to think that requires constant and permanent training for teachers, but not only for teachers, but it could be like for students and for parents. So we need to think about the autonomy of students. It requires different processes, but also requires the participation of all the students and the teacher. And it requires a virtual space, that we need to think in a virtual space and in a real space. And my theoretical framework, I searched different information, but I chose this fourth paper. Yes, because there are different information and really important information that have each paper. The first es de la educación a distancia a la educación virtual. Second, el derecho a la educación en tiempos de crisis, alternativas para la continuidad educativa. The third, educación a distancia, educación presencial y usos de la tecnología, una triada para el proceso educativo. And fourth, online and remote learning in higher education institutes, a necessity in light of COVID-19 pandemic. So with this information, we need to construct and detail in a logical way to the possible answer to the research topic. Yes. In my research scheme, we have the virtual education and the online education. We had the face-to-face education and the online education. We need to think about the virtual education that has been presented as an alternative that can be adapted. And also, education opens up a diversity of possibilities for learning from home, because uh, online education have an advantages to work from home, to learn or to teach from home. Yes. The methodology, I use the Brunner's cognitive perspective, and I take into account 4 important points that are the predisposition of our students, the way of a body knowledge can be structured, the most effective sequences to present a material, and the nature of rewards and punishments. In my thematic scheme, I write a scheme of my chapters of my thesis. So the first is related to COVID-19. That is, what is COVID-19, the recommendations for population, and for the mental health of the population. In the chapter 2, we have the virtual education. What is virtual education background, the students, parents, and teachers' needs. And the last one are like a way to integrate both topics, the COVID-19 and the virtual education. So we have chapter 3, what impact has virtual education had in times of pandemic? Yes. And we have the schedule, that are all the processes that I made in this time with my project and in the future. And at last, my references. So thank you for your attention. Hope you liked my project, and thank you.